Thank you, Billy. Thank you, Maureen. Told you she was worth waiting for. I always just need a few moments. You do it to me every time, Maureen. I love it. Just what happens is, if you haven't heard Maureen and watched my reactions, like I have no idea what I'm talking about. For this moment, it's just it's like I'm just. All right, today is Easter. Still Easter. Still in the middle of Passover. And just had the spring equinox. All those things are happening this time of year. Still, yes? Yes. Lots of people are celebrating these things this time of year. All three of them. I happen to be raised with probably what a lot of you were, the story that Jesus was born this virgin immaculate birth and was the king right when he was born. Fast forward through his life, many people seem to skip all the good things that he did and skip all the teachings, and they kind of go to the next part, which is what people are celebrating today. That idea that he died on the cross for our sins. I was taught all this. He died for my sins, and then he resurrected, and his disciples got to see him for a while, and then he ascended to sit at the right hand of God. Were a lot of you raised with that too? Yeah. Some of you were. Some of you were shaking your head no. Some of you were probably raised with Passover. Some of you are celebrating the spring equinox. But I was raised with all those things. I started to question all that about 14 years old, and I stopped looking at it as literal. I couldn't take all these things as literal around the time I was a teenager, so I started to look at it as metaphorical. And that's how I look at it today, that these are meant to be taken as teachings with messages, not to be taken quite so literally. If you were to go look up Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John of the New Testament, there are enough discrepancies in the story to keep a scholarly mind busy for a long time. And I'm not trying to be a smart aleck when I say that. But if we're to take it literal, which version are we going to take? Because they don't match. I challenge you to go, if you happen to have a Bible at home, and read the stories of the crucifixion and the resurrection in just those 4 books right there. And you'll go, oh my gosh, she's right. There's a lot of discrepancies, and scholars have spent years going through it. There's a couple of scholars that I happen to trust a whole lot, and I mentioned them last week. Rocco Errico and Bishop John Shelby Spahn are my go-to people for my information. I'm not going to spend as much time as they did checking it out and researching it. But one thing I know for sure is that none of us, not even those scholars, are going to know for absolutely sure because we weren't there. So I take what the scholars say and I choose what makes most sense to my mind, because spirituality has to make sense to me. I don't believe in the blind faith thing. I believe that it has to make some sense. So to look at it in a metaphorical way, though, it does offer us a lot of messages and a lot of wonderful teachings. Now, although the Christian faith right now is celebrating Easter, the idea of the rebirth and the renewal at springtime, people started celebrating that thousands of years before Jesus was even born. The people that lived, that were pre-Christian, that lived out in the wilderness, who were called pagans, not a name to be afraid of, by the way. I was raised in a church that pagan was a dirty word. That was bad. Those were bad people. Somehow, in that church, it got synonymous with like Satan. Pagan just referred to the people who lived out in nature and celebrated the cycles of nature. Pre-Christian people, nothing to be afraid of. So if I use that word and if it hits a button, that's probably just old teaching, right? But the people who were celebrating the natural cycles, that was all happening thousands and thousands and thousands of years. They were watching the shift from the barren landscape of winter and the darkness of the light, watching it shift, and this light was coming back, and the flowers were blooming, and the trees were once again becoming covered with leaves, and the little animals were coming out of their dens of hibernation, and they thought, hey, this is worth celebrating. New life life is happening. Rebirth is happening. Renewal is happening. That's a wonderful thing to celebrate. All that came before Jesus. What some Christians probably don't know, and I'm sorry if this bursts your bubble, is that Easter itself has pagan origins. Now, if you have a lot of really strong Christian people in your family, you may not want to tell them this, because they may not really want to hear it. And I'm not saying it. Yeah.
Tell your mom.
No, I don't talk to my own family about this. Okay, but Christianity works for my family really well, and I respect that immensely. As taught, it doesn't work for me quite the same way. For me, it's really cool to understand that this time of year, the whole idea of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection got placed this time of year. You know, if you can trace back all those thousands of years and watch the slow metamorphosis from this pre-Christian pagan idea of celebrating the spring equinox to now, and it got placed here. That's not a bad thing, that's a beautiful thing. But to me, it's a recognition thing, that they are tied together. And Passover is happening right now too. All these things kind of got placed. I'm not going to go through all kinds of history because, you know, it's not my thing. Just a little bit. Now let me go to the dictionary real quick before I get to the crux of the matter for us. The dictionary, I looked up the word resurrect. And it says a few things. I think, hey, we can all relate to this every day. It says, I'm going to give you three. To cause something that had ended or been lost to exist or be used again. Yeah, I relate to that. Another one says to raise from the dead. Metaphorically, I would say. The last one says to bring to view or attention. I can relate to all those. Here's some of the synonyms that I found under resurrect. Reanimate, rejuvenate, rebirth, renew, reawaken, to mention a few. Love all those. I can apply those to my life right here, right now. Then I went to Unity's Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. Unity is a cousin of ours, and they have this big, thick book, and it's called the Unity's Metaphysical Bible Dictionary. And here's what they say. Resurrection means the raising of the mind and body from sense to spiritual consciousness. From sense, the material, physical plane. From sense to spiritual consciousness. To raise the mind and the body from the sensory, the physical, the corporeal to the spiritual consciousness. Again, it's like, okay. But to me, whether we're celebrating Passover, whether we're celebrating Ostara on the spring equinox, or whether we're celebrating Easter, does not matter as much as how we apply and understand the meanings of the messages. And that's what I'm all about. Whatever message you're going to use it to apply to your life right now. Not just to make holy some other person. Because it's you who are also holy. So Ernest Holmes, our founder, doesn't deny when people say, well, do you believe Jesus is the Son of God? He says, yes, absolutely. And so are you. See, so we don't deny that. We just say everybody is the Son of God. Do we say that Jesus' life had messages? Absolutely. Really, really wonderful messages. A lot of them get lost because people are spending time worshiping Him rather than following Him. And for me, it's much more important that we can take the messages and take the meaning and apply them to your life, to our lives. So what are we talking about? We're talking really about release and renewal. That's the crux of the whole matter, release and renewal. We need to let go of the old dead corpses that no longer serve us. What are the old dead corpses? They're the ways of thinking, there's the ways of believing, there's the actions, the habits, the things that we're doing on automatic pilot perhaps, that we haven't stopped to say, is this really working for me? As Dr. Phil would say, how's it working for you? Yeah. We need to examine it from time to time. The old dead corpses, if you take that image literally, it's kind of gross. So we don't want that mudding up our lives. So release and renewal so that we can begin to move ourselves from the old. So think of it as dying to the old. Listen to the metaphor there.